Somewhere, right now, a stream is live. A chat is scrolling. A face is lit blue by a monitor in an otherwise dark room. And somewhere in that darkness, just outside the frame, something is watching back. Streaming is supposed to be the safest kind of performance. You're alone, but you're not alone. Thousands of eyes are on you, ready to laugh, ready to comment, ready to help. But what happens when those eyes see something you can't? What happens when the chat is screaming a warning and you can't hear it in time? Tonight, 3 stories, 3 streamers, 3 nights where the audience became witnesses to something no one could explain. Stay until the end. The last one is the one that made me lock my front door twice. Let's get into it. It was a Tuesday, which meant nothing special. Just another 11 p.m. stream for Mara, a variety streamer with about 40,000 followers, known for cozy horror game playthroughs and a laugh that made people feel like they were hanging out with a friend, not watching a screen. Her setup was simple: desk in the corner of her bedroom, monitor, ring light, and, behind her, maybe 6 feet back, a window that looked out over her building's shared backyard. No streetlights back there, just black. She'd streamed from that exact spot for 2 years. The window had never been a problem. If anything, viewers liked it. It gave the room depth, made the space feel real instead of like a green-screened studio. That night, she was playing a slow-burn indie horror game, the kind where nothing happens for 20 minutes and then everything happens at once. Perfect background noise for a chat that liked to joke around. About 40 minutes in, someone typed, "Who's that behind you?" Mara laughed it off. She gets this a lot. People trying to spook her mid-game, especially during horror content. It's basically a genre convention at this point. She didn't even turn around. Nice try, chat. Not falling for it tonight. But then 3 more messages, almost at once. "No, seriously, there's someone in the yard. Bro, look at the window. Mara, turn around." The chat was moving fast now. Not the usual chaotic spam of a horror game jump scare, but something tighter, more urgent. 12 people, then 24, all saying variations of the same thing. Streamers develop an instinct for the difference between chat performing a bit together and chat genuinely reacting to something. This felt like the second one. She paused the game, glanced at the chat log scrolling past, normally a wall of emotes and inside jokes, now dense with the same 3 or 4 words repeated over and over. Window. Behind you. Someone's there. Okay, she said, half laughing. The kind of laugh people do when they're trying to convince themselves they're not nervous. "You guys are relentless tonight." She turned her chair around to face the window, mostly to prove a point to her audience. "See? Nothing's there. Drop it." The yard was pure black, the way it always was. No motion lights, no neighbors' porch lamps reaching that far. Just her own dim reflection ghosted onto the glass, and beyond it, nothing she could make out. "See? Nothing," she said, turning back to her webcam. "You guys are just trying to get me to scream on stream, and I love that for you. But it moved. Something moved when you turned back. I'm not joking, Mara. Please check again." Here's the thing about a live stream. Viewers are watching 2 feeds at once without realizing it. They're watching Mara's webcam, small, in the corner, and they're watching the rest of the frame, half-consciously, the way your eyes drift to the edges of any scene. Multiple viewers, in separate messages, said the same thing happened at the same timestamp. For less than a second, something in the window shifted position. Not dramatically, just a change, like a shape leaning slightly, adjusting its weight. Mara didn't turn around again. Something in the tone of the chat had changed her mind about doing it as a bit. She said, still smiling for the camera, but with her voice a half-step tighter, "Okay, you're actually kind of freaking me out now. Can we talk about something else?" That's when the lights flickered. It wasn't a full blackout, just a stutter. The kind that happens sometimes with old wiring, lasting maybe half a second, the overhead light in her room dipping and then snapping back. Completely unremarkable on any other night. But on this night, with the window behind her and 40,000 people already tense, that half-second of dimness did something specific. It changed the lighting angle on the glass just enough that for one frame of video, the window stopped being a black rectangle and became a mirror. And in that mirror, reflected clearly enough that clip compilations of the moment now have millions of views, was a hand, pressed flat against the outside of the glass, fingers spread, positioned at roughly shoulder height, the height of someone standing directly behind her chair. The chat didn't even have time to type a full sentence. It just exploded into raw text, caps lock, spammed emotes, dozens of people typing the same 3 letters at once. Mara herself didn't see it.
She was facing her webcam, not the window, when it happened. She only knew something had happened because the chat went in the space of 1 second from urgent to something closer to panic. She didn't turn around. Later, in interviews about the incident, she said this was the part she still can't fully explain. Not fear exactly, but a kind of certainty, an animal calculation that turning around was the wrong move. Instead, she reached over, without looking, and grabbed her phone and called her roommate, who was 2 rooms away. And she talked, on stream, in a voice she was clearly fighting to keep steady, asking him to come check the window from outside. The lights didn't flicker again. The chat kept scrolling, slower now, more careful, people typing things like, "Stay facing us," and "Don't look back." Like they were suddenly aware they were the only ones who could see what was happening and completely unable to do anything about it from wherever they were. Her roommate came out with a flashlight. On stream, viewers watched his light sweep across the yard through the window. Grass, a fence, a shed. Nothing. No footprints in the damp grass. According to what he said when he came back in, no sign anyone had been there. Mara ended the stream 9 minutes later, earlier than she ever had before. She didn't stream again for 6 days. When she came back, the desk had moved. Window at her side now, always in frame, never behind her again. She never got a clear answer for what the hand was. Reflection artifact. Someone leaning against the glass from outside. A trick of the flickering light distorting her own raised hand as she gestured mid-sentence. Every explanation has been offered, and none of them quite explain why the fingers in that frame were spread wider than any hand she owns, or why the print, when her roommate checked the outside of the glass the next morning in daylight, was still faintly visible in the condensation. Handprint height, shoulder height, facing in. To this day, when people ask her about that night, she says the same thing. "I don't need to know what it was. I just know I'm never sitting with my back to a window again." Dorian built his channel on abandoned places, old hospitals, gutted schools, forgotten industrial sites. The kind of urban exploration content that thrives on atmosphere and isolation. His formula was simple and effective. Go somewhere no one goes anymore, alone, at night, and let the silence do the work. No commentary track, no jump scare editing, just a camera, a flashlight, and whatever the building had to offer. For the stream that would end his career as a solo explorer, he'd picked a textile factory outside the city, shut down for almost 2 decades, structurally condemned but never demolished. The kind of place local teenagers dared each other to enter, and mostly didn't. Dorian had scouted it once in daylight a week earlier. He knew the layout. Ground floor, offices, then a stairwell down into a basement level that used to house the factory's boiler system, the deepest, darkest part of the building, and exactly the kind of location his audience loved most. He wore noise-canceling headphones, as he always did,
both to hear the building's ambient sound clearly through his mic and to block out any distracting background noise while he focused on navigating the dark. It was a habit that had never caused a problem before. That night, it very nearly cost him everything. The stream had a built-in 10-second delay, standard for platforms handling video encoding and distribution, meaning that whatever Dorian did, whatever he encountered, his audience wouldn't see it until 10 seconds after it happened in real time. Normally, this delay is invisible, meaningless. That night, it became the entire story. About 25 minutes into the basement segment, with Dorian's flashlight beam sweeping across corroded pipes and collapsed shelving, Chat started picking up on something in the audio.
Despite the noise-canceling headphones limiting what Dorian himself could hear, his microphone was still picking up ambient sound from the room around him, and that ambient sound included something that was not Dorian's footsteps. Is someone else down there with him? Listen to the audio. There's 2 sets of footsteps. At first it seemed like an echo. Basements like this had concrete walls and low ceilings, exactly the kind of acoustics that could bounce a single footstep into something that sounded doubled. That was the working theory in Chat for a few minutes, half joking, half genuinely uneasy. Then the footsteps stopped matching. Dorian would step, and the audio would catch his step. Then, a fraction of a second later, a second step, heavier, slower, unmistakably out of rhythm with his own pace. Not an echo. Echoes don't have their own tempo. This had weight to it, a specific cadence, like someone deliberately timing their movements just slightly behind his, close enough to be nearly masked by his own footsteps, far enough off that once you heard the separation, you couldn't unhear it. The Chat tried to warn him. Of course they did. Hundreds of people, then thousands, typing every version of the same message. Turn around, someone's behind you, get out now, Dorian, listen. But this is where the 10-second delay stopped being a technical footnote and became the entire horror of the night. Every warning Chat sent was reacting to something that had already happened 10 seconds ago in Dorian's world, and by the time he could theoretically read it, whatever was following him had already had 10 more seconds to close the distance. Worse, Dorian wasn't looking at Chat. He never did during these segments. He'd said before that reading comments while exploring broke his immersion, and frankly, his concentration in genuinely unstable buildings. He was moving through the dark with his headphones sealed around his ears, entirely unaware that a room full of strangers was watching, in near real time, something match his pace 15 feet behind him. The footsteps got closer. Audio analysis done afterward by fans, frame by frame, time-stamped the moment the second set of footsteps closed, from roughly matching a 15-foot gap down to what sound engineers who reviewed the clip estimated was less than 6 feet. Close enough that, on a normal night, in a normal building, you'd expect to hear breathing. There was no breathing. That was, according to almost everyone who has rewatched the footage, the worst part. Whatever it was moved like a body, waited like a body, timed itself with the eerie precision of something that understood exactly how to stay hidden in the gaps of someone else's rhythm, but it made no other sound, no breath, no cloth rustling, no voice. Dorian, oblivious, turned into a side room to examine an old boiler unit, his flashlight beam cutting across rusted metal. And the second set of footsteps didn't follow him into the room. It stopped directly outside the doorway. Chat, watching a static shot of an empty hallway on a 10-second delay, watched the audio pick up nothing at all for almost 90 seconds. The longest 90 seconds of silence anyone in that chat had ever sat through. Made unbearable by the certainty that whatever had been pacing Dorian for the last 10 minutes hadn't left. It had simply stopped where it was, right outside the door he'd walked through, waiting for something. Dorian, still narrating for a channel he thought was purely a monologue and to avoid,
said something like, "This boiler's actually in decent shape. You can still see the manufacturer plate," completely unaware that behind him, 10 seconds in the past from his audience's perspective and 0 seconds in his own, a chat of thousands had gone dead silent watching an empty doorway. He didn't find out what had happened until he got home and reviewed the VOD himself.
There's a clip, still circulating, of the exact moment he pauses the playback, leans back from his monitor, and says nothing for 11 full seconds. He hasn't done a solo night stream since. When people ask why, he says, "It's not really about believing in anything supernatural. It's simpler than that." He says he can't stop thinking about the 90 seconds of silence outside that door, and the fact that if he'd walked back out into that hallway when he originally planned to, 30 seconds earlier than he actually did, chat would have been watching him walk directly into it, 10 seconds too late to say a word. Kellen streamed late, later than most. His regular slot started around 1 a.m. and ran until sunrise, catering to an audience of insomniacs, night shift workers, and people scattered across time zones where 1 a.m. actually meant a reasonable hour. He lived alone in a ground-floor apartment, streamed from his living room, and had built a loyal following over 3 years almost entirely on late-night chill vibes. Music, casual games, rambling conversation with chat that felt more like a small gathering of friends than a broadcast to strangers. The donation alert on his stream was simple. A small pop-up with a chime, the donor's message read aloud by his text-to-speech software. He got maybe a dozen donations on a good night, mostly small, mostly friendly. He never thought twice about them. Why would he? They were just numbers and messages from people who liked what he did. At 2:47 a.m., a donation came in. $5. The message, read aloud in his stream's flat, robotic voice, said, "Enjoying the coffee in the red mug?" Kellen laughed, glanced down at the desk beside his keyboard where, in fact, there sat a red ceramic mug, half full of coffee he'd made 20 minutes earlier. He held it up to the camera, grinning. "Good guess. Or you know me really well. Either way, thank you." It read as a fun coincidence. Chat treated it that way too. A few people joked that the donor must be a regular who knew his habits, someone who'd watched enough streams to guess he'd have coffee going at 3 a.m. It's the kind of detail a longtime viewer could plausibly infer. Kellen moved on, kept talking, kept playing his game. 11 minutes later, a second donation came in. Same amount, different message, same flat robotic voice reading it into the stream. "Your door isn't locked." The room got quieter in a way you could feel even through a screen. Kellen's smile faltered. Not dramatically, just a small falter, the kind of hesitation you'd miss if you weren't watching closely, which, of course, thousands of people were. He laughed again, but it came out thinner this time. "Okay, that one's a little weird," he said. "I mean, it probably isn't locked, honestly. I never check after I get home." Chat, which moments earlier had been making jokes, shifted almost instantly into something colder. "Check the door. Kellen, go check right now. Don't ignore that." The tone was different from the joking energy around the coffee comment. Sharper, more insistent, the kind of collective urgency that emerges when a lot of strangers suddenly agree on the same bad feeling at once. Kellen got up. He kept his laptop webcam running, angled it slightly so it caught more of the room as he crossed toward the front hallway, half narrating for the stream out of habit, half because talking made the walk feel less unsettling. "You guys are being paranoid. It's probably just—" He stopped mid-sentence. Even off camera, his voice changed. Audibly, on the recording, you can hear the shift, a kind of flat surprise. Then he came back into frame, a little pale, and said, "It was open. I always lock it. I always lock it before I start streaming. That's like step 1. He locked it in front of the camera this time, visibly, turning the deadbolt, checking it twice. He sat back down,
tried to laugh it off again, told Chat he must have just forgotten. It happens. He was probably distracted earlier. Chat was not convinced.
Neither, you could tell, was he. His usual easy rambling had gone tighter, more clipped, his eyes flicking toward the hallway every couple of minutes in a way he clearly wasn't doing on purpose. 9 minutes passed without another donation, long enough that some of the tension in the room started to ease. Kellen started talking normally again, got back into his game, made a joke about how he was going to have nightmares about mugs now. Chat laughed along with him. It felt, briefly, like the night was recovering.
Then the third donation came in, same $5. And this time, the message was shorter than the others. Just 4 words, read aloud in that same emotionless text-to-speech voice into a room that had gone, once again, completely silent.
"I'm in the hallway."
Kellen didn't move for a full 3 seconds. Then, before he could say anything, before Chat could even finish typing the first frantic wave of messages, the stream cut out. Not a crash, not a frozen frame. The feed simply ended. The platform's standard stream offline screen replacing his living room mid-sentence, mid-motion, with no warning and no goodbye. Viewers who'd had his other social accounts refreshed them obsessively for the next hour, watching for any sign he was okay. Nothing came for almost 90 minutes. When he finally posted a single message on his account, not a video, not a stream, it was short. He said his internet had gone out. That when he'd gone to check his router, sitting on a shelf in his front hallway, he found it unplugged. Not malfunctioning, not knocked loose by accident. Unplugged, the cable neatly coiled beside it, in a way he said he never does and never had done before. He said he checked every window and door in the apartment that night. All locked, all secure. The front door included, still deadbolted exactly the way he'd left it on camera. No sign of forced entry, no sign anyone had been inside at all, aside from an unplugged router sitting exactly where a person would stand if they were waiting, quietly, in a dark hallway, for the right moment to end the stream themselves. He never streamed from that apartment again.
He moved within the month, gave no interviews about the specifics, and to this day declines to say much about that night, beyond a single line he's repeated a few times when asked. Whoever it was knew exactly what I was holding, and exactly which door to open. I don't need any more proof than that. The donor account that sent all 3 messages was created the same night, used exactly 3 times, and never used again. It had no name, just a string of numbers. No one has ever figured out who or what was behind it.
3 streamers, 3 nights. 3 audiences who saw something the person on camera couldn't. A hand on the glass. Footsteps in the dark. A door that shouldn't have been open. That's the specific horror of being a streamer, isn't it? You're never really alone on camera. But you're never really protected by the people watching, either. They can only ever warn you 10 seconds too late. So here's the question I want you to sit with and drop in the comments. If you were watching your favorite streamer live right now and you saw something behind them that they couldn't see, would you say something? Or would some part of you be too afraid that saying it out loud would make it real? Let me know below. And maybe check your own door before you go to bed tonight. I'll see you in the next one.